got DT. So you think it's all good?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Just call.
What happened? You called there?
Yeah. I called a 4-bet and I min led 3 streets. Is what happened.
You put in it. You raised it with the top or so on the river.
It was very small. I think it was
Small.
it was a half pot. It was like 75 actually. It was 36 into 67%.
And you just let me know if I'm distracting with all my questions and stuff.
No?
But no, I'm curious. So this was back in. So when you met Doug in Korea, you were in college and you were playing like 1-2 6 max at that point.
When I met Doug, I was actually just not playing poker. I just happened, I just like didn't really like it. I didn't like the game I was playing. I was playing live, which also is something that I never really liked in the first place. Um, and I think I just took a long time. I took a lot of time off from poker before I decided to get back into it. All right, now this is another situation. Let's call.
Yeah, flush there. I didn't.
Yeah, the small flush.
So you had played. So you played 1-2 6 max for a while. Then you got kind of sick of it, and then you played live in Vegas for a while.
I don't think I ever got sick of the 6 max because it was online in front of a computer and it was very convenient. But I definitely got really tired of playing in a casino and like after Black Friday, I had a lot of my money on full tilt, and I always played like smaller stakes in the first place, but moved to Las Vegas to play like small stakes live, like 2-5, while I like figured out what I was gonna do, whether I was gonna go back to school or continue to play poker or move abroad, or I just had like I just knew I had to do something, and and after playing in Vegas for like 6 months, I just really hated playing poker, so ended up just doing a lot of traveling, and that's where I met Doug.
And you had finished college at that point.
No, at this point, I think I already taken a lot of time off, and I'm 2 years in, and I haven't finished.
So you did part of college and then you took some time
Yeah,
off.
I definitely took a lot of time off.
And then at some point after that, I guess you decided to move outside the U.S. to keep playing.
hmm I guess my trip to abroad, one of my main priorities or goals were to open a PokerStars account, but I was really naive to think that it was like a very simple process, and it wasn't. Um, I got a lot of pushback from the sites, or I didn't have all my ducks in order. So I basically failed doing it.
Wait, so you moved somewhere else, and the sites just wouldn't let you open an account because you had to like prove your address and prove all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't really do a lot of research before. I just thought once I'm out there, I would figure it out, or it would be fairly easy or fairly straightforward. But the problem was I didn't really have a permanent residence for a very long period of time. While I was traveling in Asia, I never stayed in one place for more than like a few weeks. So that was really hard. Like getting the paperwork was a lot harder than I thought, or I would have to like really find like a permanent residence where I'm like there for more than 3 months. Um, but then after I met Doug, I eventually started just playing on American sites for a while in the U.S. and just went from there.
So you moved abroad to try to play, and just the sites are like you can't just move there for a few months to play. You need to prove that you're like permanently
Right.
residing there. So what exactly do they require you? Like a lease agreement that says that like you're.
It really depends. Skrill and PokerStars specifically are the most strict. I believe all the other sites are a bit more lax. Um, uh, you need like a utility bill or some sort of normally a bank statement. That's kind of a more of a standard. Um, like a lease or and everything else after that is kind of a like depends if like the sites are like a little bit more lenient. Um, I guess that's I haven't done any of that for a very long time, but I know it's like kind of a hassle. Lately, it's been a lot easier, I believe.
So the main obstacles you're saying are utility bill and the lease.
Yeah. So as long as you can prove, once you like move out there and like have a place to stay for like a few months, or not even for a few months, but like if you're living there, eventually you'll like have all the paperwork. I don't think you can like it just becomes very difficult if you're in a country with that's really not expat friendly for banks when it comes to banking, and if you're just staying on a friend's couch, then you have like no paperwork.
So the bank wouldn't let you open an account, and you couldn't prove a lease because you were staying at a friend's place.
Yeah, that never happened to me, but that's very common for a lot of people. They move out to wherever, and they're actually at a country where getting a bank account in the first place is actually very difficult, or not really for foreigners. Some countries it's a lot more liberal, like Hong Kong. Like Hong Kong's banking system is very liberal in general, whereas like I guess due to recent years, I heard in Mexico you need a visa in order to open up a bank. On some parts you don't, but for the most part you do require.
So then you went abroad hoping to play, and then was unsuccessful. Although I hope you had a fun vacation.
I did. I did. It was
You met Doug, that's right. Yeah. So then you came back and you played on U.S. sites for a while
mhm.
at that point.
Yeah. You, at the time I didn't play very high stakes, so the US sites were fine. It was more than enough to.
So still back in 2011, 2012, you were still playing pretty low
Yep.
stakes.
Yeah, I would say so. Wait, 2011? 2012, still pretty low. I honestly only really recently started playing higher stakes about 2 years ago on a more consistent basis. Uh, that wasn't. I was always in and out. Like I took a shot and really didn't work out, so I had to move down and like rebuild my bankroll and like kind of did that like 4 or 5 times, and it's very tedious when it doesn't work out. Um, sure, I think I got a little unlucky, but ultimately, in hindsight, I was just over my head. I was outclassed. I just definitely got beat.
This was for heads up. So you challenge someone. So you would be playing like 10-20. You say, okay, I want to go for 25-50. So you challenge someone you thought was a weaker 25-50 player. And then,
Sort of. I actually never really had trouble getting to 5, 10, and 10, 20, but what was really hard is breaking through 25, 50. That's really where the skill gap really is. And where was and there was a specific opponent out there at the time where I thought was a soft player, but he only played 5100, so I had this like huge stake gap. Um, so every time I lost there, it was a much bigger loss than it should have been.
so you had pretty much been playing 10-20. You're like, okay, I want to move on. but then a good person to play wants to play 50, 100, so that's like a 5x.
Yeah, it was a very big stake jump. Yeah. But
Did you consider getting, staked for
I
part of
thought,
that?
well, actually, I think I went very aggressively at the time, but I did sell like a lot of it, so I sort of made it the price I wanted, and it was someone that I did want to play at high stakes. It's just when you're trying to break through and like you're not quite as good, or you're just not quite there yet, and you're what was I gonna say? Uh, Sorry, it's like actually harder to talk and play a little bit.
Yeah,
It's
just don't tell me if it's
no,
good
it's
and not talk through it.
some harder. It's just that stake is such a hard stake to break through. You kind of have to like get lucky first time. So you,
We've had
so
the
at least
2550.
yeah, because like everyone's pretty good there. Everyone at 2550 is pretty good, and if you just win the first time, I think you like have a lot more leeway of like losing, or you don't have to move down. Just the whole moving down factor really sets you back so much.
And how many tables when you were doing these stakes? Your heads up, how many tables?
Uh, well,
Was it one table?
no, I generally really don't like playing one table. I prefer 3 to 4. 5 is just really too much. 2 is like kind of on the slower side. 1 is very slow.
So
But
did you consider when you were moving up doing something like, okay, I'll do like 2 of the 1020 and 2 of the 2550, or like sort of making it
no,
or you just like to just move up and then go all out with whatever stake you're doing.
well, you can't really do that for heads up at least because it's really important to just play one opponent, or it just gets too confusing. It's not like a six max game where you like just play poker and like everyone has like different seats, and you can really manage to play a lot of tables. But the moment you have like 3 opponents up, uh, if you have a leak anywhere, like you can be exploited over and over again, and like playing even 2 different players is actually pretty tough. And I would say like I only do that if like it's a much softer player. I would never stand a chance playing like 2 difficult players or 2 tough players.
So when you said that you like to play 3 to 4 tables, that's usually against the same opponent.
Yeah, definitely. And I would say 3 is like a very standard number. Most players like to play between 3 to 2. I would say 4 is really rare.
Do you know why the
Oh yeah, it's just this the
Oh,
Chromecast
there we
goes
go.
out.
Yeah, because when I played, mostly sit and goes or whatever, but in a bunch of tables, it's moving up was, I could do my stake and then I could add in a couple of the ones
Yeah, so
higher,
at the end of the
so
day, it's like a
it's not like you run down at the higher ones and like that works out.
yeah, it's like a average
It's more gradual.
yeah, like you just have like an average buy-in, and that's kind of the stake you play.
Although it still hurts if you run bad at your highest buy-in. Um,
The only
that can still hurt a lot, but it's good to at least not have to be 100% of your games and now at the highest
well the difference between that situation and heads up was the fact that every time you take a shot and it doesn't work out and you have to move down to like your stakes or possibly lower, the guys you beat up at like for example like 5, 10, 10, 20 aren't going to really be there to like so you can rebuild. You have to like win it off other players and generally more tougher players. So moving down and rebuilding your row in heads up specifically is that's kind of tough. Whereas like in heads up sit or in sit and goes, I guess heads up sit and goes not so much. it's kind of similar. But I guess any form of heads-up variation, if you like play other professionals, you won't really have the player pool you used to play. Does that make any sense?
So I think you're saying, okay, you say 10-20, you win, you move up to 25-50, and it doesn't go well, and then you want to move back down. You're saying now the people who used to play against you at the 10-20, they're either not there or they're not willing to play against you anymore.
Yeah, that's
because they knew, oh, it's like a 25-50 guy now, so they're more scared of playing you or something.
not so much that I'm a 25-50 guy, but more so that they were losing to me.
They were losing to you before,
Yeah.
and so now you're going to have a tough time getting players to play you.
Yeah, and another very common thing is like the player that lost to you like leaves poker, or it's just that player pool is never there. And there was a lot of rinsing and repeating with that process where like happened at 2-4 to 3-6, moving up to 5-10, and like if that didn't go on, and I believe every stake jump I never did really well initially. I think at every stake jump I really wasn't totally ready for it. Looking back on it, at the time I thought I just got really unlucky, and like some of my friends told me I got really unlucky, but I just really wasn't ready for it.
Do you mean in terms of bankroll or skill level or both?
Not so much the banker. I've always been kind of conservative all the time about that, but skill level, definitely.
So you were doing well at beating the players who were playing in 10-20, but so the reason you don't think you were ready is do you think you could have gotten ready by playing against those same people at 10-20 more, or by doing like additional studying?
Excuse me.
Beyond just playing more at 10-20.
I would. That's really hard to answer, mainly because just scrolling. Alright. It's really hard to study your opponent because you've never really played them. You don't really know anything about them. So the only thing you could really do is like study your game. But at the time, I didn't really view or approach poker that way. I didn't really work hard on my game. What I did was just the 6-max approach, where if I played a lot of poker, I will eventually make a lot of money. But that really wasn't where the money was at. I feel like I always lose here.
You said the money was. I missed that. Sorry, you said 6-max.
In 6-max, it's very common that like the more hands you play, as long as you're a winner, you're like kind of like there are two ways to win money playing poker. One, have a great win rate and play like some hands, and there's another ones like you can have a very small win rate but play like millions of hands. And I approached poker with the millions of hands, and which wasn't like that would never get me to high stakes. It would probably make me like a decent living at whatever stakes I was playing. But I think the moment I kept getting beat at 25-50 and over, which happened many, many times, I decided to take it a little bit more seriously. And there was a point where I went on a really big downswing. Took a shot at higher stakes, and then I, for some reason, couldn't even beat the stakes I was playing. I think at the time it was 5-10 and 10-20, mainly because people, again, like my player pool wasn't there. The only guys at 10-20 that would play me were like the tough 25-50 guys that were willing to play lower. And 10-20 online is kind of a no man's land. There are a lot of like 5-10 regulars, and the 25-50 regulars, there's a huge skill gap. But at 10-20, the only regulars are generally like the 5-10 players that will play some 10-20 versus softer players, or the 25-50 players that are much tougher and probably like will beat you at the 10-20 level. And that was kind of the only player pool there. Um, so breaking into 2550 really feels like going from like I don't know 715 to 2550 in a weird way.
Was that from 715 to 2550?
Yeah, because if you were a 1020 reg taking a shot 2550, that's a 2.5 times stake jump, which is already like pretty big in the ladder. But 1020 is a stake that's really hard to get action in the first place. And I've always acknowledged that to like a lot of the 510 and 1020 players, and it really is the toughest stake to get into. Because I would say I've tried from the very first time I played 2550. It took me like almost 2 years to finally be a regular. I mean, there was a period of time where like I was becoming more and more regular, but I was much more selective about the players I chose. Or I was much more game selecting a little bit more of the opponents I played.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what you meant by like, breaking into a state, because you could always sit a lobby
I would just
at
reference
2550 and then
right.
sit out and whoever sits. So, um,
I was more referencing like that being like your normal stake for your bankroll and your skill level. Like you kind of have like peers among those stakes. You probably have similar bankrolls or similar skill sets or a skill level.
and then so I take it you finally started beating your 2550. What was that? You said just like 2 years ago or so?
Yes, like started being 2550 much more consistently. You only really feel like you made it when like there are 2550 players that do not want to play you. Wait, what?
It's a re-raise.
Yeah, I don't remember this is called.
I wonder what this new re-raise range is.
Could have whatever. Show up with.
I forget. So you're currently um, somewhere outside the U.S. that obviously end up playing
Sort of. I'm actually kind of homeless right now. I moved out. I was sick of paying rent and like traveling at the same time. Since I don't spend a lot of time out of the country, I decided to move out of my place, stop paying rent in Seattle, and just kind of left some stuff with some of my family members, and I have everything that I own in my suitcase. And I've been just doing a lot of traveling for the past 6 months. My next couple stops are Vancouver for a few weeks, and then Vegas for a couple months. But then I plan to go back home to Seattle. This has just been too rough, like living at hotels and like short-term stays. And I just can't do it anymore.
So you've been. I missed a little of that. So basically, you've been living a lot in hotels around Seattle.
Not when I'm home, but just because in let's just say since December I was in Seattle, Vancouver, and then went to Hawaii for a few days, and the Bahamas for a few days, and uh, then to Australia for a few months, um, then to Thailand for a month, then to Hong Kong, then to Korea for a few weeks. Now I'm here. That was like over like a period of like 4 months. So I just knew I had this like very long trip ahead of me. That's kind of what I. You should probably do something like that.
I'd like to. I pretty much my vacations for the last few years have been wherever there's an academic conference, which sometimes is just a cool location. Actually,
I would say I'm kind of in a similar boat as you. Whenever I travel, my primary goal, or at least not a goal, but primary objective or secondary was always involved poker. But I think like sometime next year I would like to go somewhere that doesn't have poker as a vacation. I rarely do that.
So most of the travels you mentioned in the last half year or so, were related to poker?
Yeah,
So
everywhere I
there was
went,
an event in various places.
or like for example, my trip to Thailand. I used to live there, but or my trip to Korea, it wasn't for an event or per se. It was just the idea of like being outside the U.S. Was good enough for me. And I've as long as I could play online, I'm pretty happy, and I can, yeah,
So you got official residence in one place, I guess, and then and then you can just travel. Once you've proven you have residence in Canada or whatever, I don't know which country you moved to for that, but then you can travel around and you can still play on
right,
those sites.
yeah. Have you considered the poker option for a few months?
Oh, I mean, I still play
Oh, you still play?
on US sites. I mean, on US sites. I haven't played on PokerStars since 2011. Um, but yeah, I'm not totally sure um, what my plans are after graduation, but I definitely want to have at least some sort of real vacation, an actual vacation, not for a conference, not for
Right.
just for fun.
Yeah.
And I haven't even really thought about where or what or anything. The idea of a real vacation is just so foreign to me right now. But
You have no place in mind at all.
um, well, I just haven't even had time. I've been so busy with finishing the thesis and this competition and stuff. I haven't even just like
You're
I
right.
have places in mind, but I'm basically um, I'm graduating in a couple weeks, and then basically I'm just gonna have a decompressing period, and then think about things then.
Right.
So, uh, but yeah, um, cool. Well, it's cool to hear your story and from going from grinding from the low stakes and traveling all over, and now playing being one of the top heads up players.
Yeah.
I take it you're planning on continuing for a while to play Petsy No Limit.
Um. Yeah. I would. I do have to find like other games eventually. Um, I'm not sure. I mean, I would love to continue playing. I'd like to keep that my main game.
Yeah, some people have mentioned earlier that there's not quite as much of a player pool for that as there was a few
Yeah.
years ago. So that more people are needing to branch out to learn some other games too.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll stop distracting you for a little bit. I'll go bother Jason, but good luck
Okay.
in the
Thank
rest of
you.
the session.
Thank you. How many hands are you at? 218? 144. What? I'm okay. I know I'm behind, like way behind. I gotta just pick it up. You wanna switch?
Check. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Test. Test. Okay, yeah. Good. Alright, thank you. That's right.
Man, I keep calling its bluff or raises somewhere, and it's never bluffing me.
Really? Like on the river?
Yeah, I've like called it so many times.
No money in bots. They're all solid.
Alright.
changing up the hotkeys a little.
Yeah. Only 3 bit smaller. Is 1.25x I don't know.
for it.
ask you some things. Well, just let me know if it's distracting or if you're in a big camp or
Okay.
anything like that. Would you guys mind doing the switch so I can see your hands?
Oh, yeah. Oh, one balls.
Voice contact?
Yeah, it's contact.
I didn't see what the last
I think check
It was
was
a good fold, but
that was definitely a good ball.
you were saying you checked.
Check raising the flop and he should call the turn. And then whenever you check fold it. I mean, I probably just went wrong. But I could have bet too big, who knows.
How have you noticed this play? Like, you commented at some point before you thought on Rivers he was playing pretty well. Would you say has that view changed at all since when we last spoke?
No, I don't think so. It seems like you have changed things a little bit on the river. There's no more of the huge jams all the time. But yeah, I still think it's played pretty well in the river. So like you can't ever overbluff it. It knows what to call. And things like that. We have throws bluffs in there too. So yeah, I think it plays really well.
Would you say there's like any one street in particular that it's playing worse than others?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure.
It's more just about how it sort of gets weight throughout the whole hand.
Yeah.
As opposed to just like one street being bad or something.
Right, yeah. I couldn't really say like that streets like really
it's sort of weird to say something like that too, because like it's it's about how sort of balanced you are across everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have there's a couple questions that people, just general types of questions let's do us too, and just a couple of things I'm also sort of just interested in more about, like your, your maybe more personal background with like poker and everything. But actually, maybe I'll start with my questions. I'm just so you had mentioned that you, I guess even a few years ago, you were playing live full ring. I guess you were playing like 5-10 live, and at some point you transitioned to where you are now, playing online, heads up no limit, and high stakes, and so I'm interested just a little more about hearing. That was a pretty big transition in a pretty short amount of time, it sounds like.
Yeah, so the way that pretty much went was, I mean, I'd always played online. I'll go play live here and there. I'd play like some home games. I'll go play like LA Vegas sometimes. But it's generally like always an online player. Then things got tough after Black Friday. I could only play on like pretty shitty sites. I tried to make that work for a while. Then I only played like full time live for like 3, 4, 5 months maybe. More like 4 months I think. Last year I was playing live in LA and in Vegas, like all the time. I wasn't even playing online anymore. So I mean,
all the time. You mean like you play like 8 hours a day, 7 days?
I was running up so hard. I was showing up to the casino at like, what would it be? Like I would get there maybe at like 3:34 every day, and I'd be there until like. If I left at 2 a.m., it would be like a short day. I was averaging like putting in like 10 hours a day.
Wow.
And I just like didn't miss a day. I was just like so serious about trying to make a lot of money and like just grind really hard. Then eventually I just realized like I'm not gonna make like $1 million playing live. So I mean especially like grinding up the mid stakes. So I was like, this is gonna be my career. Like I can't just like be grinding to try and make like a little bit of money. I need to like try and make like, the most that's possibly out there. So that's when I decided to just pack it up and I moved to Vancouver. Got rid of my place in Orange County. Moved to Vancouver and I just started playing online. I started at like low stakes, like worked really hard. I wasn't afraid about playing good players. I just like the most important thing to me was always putting in volume. And a lot of people, I think that's a lot of people's mistake in heads up is they want to like play it safe